All right, so welcome back. Time to start writing some code. So our overall goal of this app is to try to start thinking a little bit about model view controller. So model view controller is a separation out of things that affect your view. So this is largely the CSS and the HTML, the controller, which in this case is purely JavaScript, and then the model. Models are typically also JavaScript. There are things you can do with like keeping your data on the back end, or there are things you can do with things called like IndexedDB or local storage. But in this case, it's going to be a really simple JavaScript variables, right? So we're just going to keep variables as our model object. So whenever they have a click, we listen for that in JavaScript. We then modify our model. And then to be honest, there's a line here for notify. We're not going to really do that. But we will update the view based on the changes to the model. So this line right here, update, we're going to largely do it in this app with a single function that we're going to write called update view. It's going to be that line. So that's the big picture. Let's start with the details. So the first thing we need to do is we need to add those JavaScript links. So here are those JavaScript links that you're going to need to just copy paste them in, right? So I'm going to go find my spot where I have that. I'm just going to paste those two things. So you can see they would be a pain to type, but there's nothing complex about them. So they say, source file, use the Google library provider to bring in jQuery. And then this one just says, look for the coffee.js, which by the way is in a JS folder. For some reason I used folders for this example, but for the demo you do later, there are no folders. Your choice, right? It's an organizational thing you can use or not. So there we've added those two scripts. So now when we write things into our JavaScript file, it should actually show up. So let's go ahead and write some things. So let's just go ahead and grab the document. And then we'll call the ready function on it. And so this is kind of, the basics of how a lot of your jQuery programs start. In this one, I chose to load it at the top, so I do need to definitely add something like this. Otherwise, the elements won't exist when I start manipulating them. So I want this code to run at the bottom, right? So this is what this says. One thing that I like to do, just to make sure I've got everything connected right, is I like to just put a little console message. You can type whatever you want, and just kind of make sure that things are loading up properly. So I come back over to my coffee counter. It's still going crazy. If I do a refresh and an inspect element, what I want to be able to do is I want to be able to see that console message. And so that's available in the console. Looks like I have a syntax error, right? So that's another good thing about the console. It'll tell you when you've got syntax errors. So I can just click on it, and it says it doesn't like the pound sign. That makes a lot of sense. Must have typed a pound sign there. Let's go with $sign for jQuery. And then, things like that happen. They're quick, they're easy. And then when you refresh it, you should hopefully get hello JavaScript using the $sign there. All right, so we've got a file that's kind of ready to go. Now we're ready to start putting things into it, right? So just kind of as a quick little challenge, see if you can pause the video and see if you can just change the title to, instead of saying coffee counter, see if you can make it say hello JavaScript. All right, so not a hard task. I'll just go ahead and do it with you. It really comes down to just looking at your HTML and just like seeing this is where it says coffee counter. How can I access that element? Well, it looks like there's an ID right on it. So I'm going to use that ID. So I'm going to come in here, and I've actually got it on my clipboard. I'm going to say, hey, make the JavaScript object based on the ID, so the pound symbol. And then what I want to do is I want to call the function text on it. You could also use HTML. It wouldn't matter in this case, but I'm going to set the text. So I'm going to use the function text to say hello JavaScript. And then I'm just going to go reload my page. And it should say hello JavaScript. So I just want to make sure you're comfortable with starting to make changes. What we're actually going to be doing, though, is we're going to be using our namespacing techniques. So I'm going to choose to make a namespace for RH, which is kind of like my company identifier, coffee, which is my project. And then if you had classes, you would actually make even more things. But we're just going to use a simple namespace of RH coffee. So here's my namespaces. Just to read this, it says, create a new variable on the window called RH, and then everything I do is going to be inside that variable. If it already exists, use it. If not, create a new one. To be honest, I use this syntax because I borrowed it from other people, but to be honest, I don't think this actually helps. I think it'll not be happy if it already existed. This one will actually help. So this says create on this a object called coffee. If it already exists, use it. That's if it's already included in some other file. If not, make a new one. And then what we really want to do is we just want a variable to serve as our model, which I'll call cups. So this is like the number of cups. So it'll start off at 0. So that looks pretty good. The next thing I want to do is I'm going to clean up my ready function a little bit. I'm actually just going to blow away what was there before. And then what I like to do is I like to keep my ready area pretty thin, right? So I have it go do other things. It seems like no matter what app I write, it has an enable buttons. So I just kind of make an enable buttons area. And so the style that I choose to use is I think of it as like, this is a variable. It just happens to be of type function, and it's called enable buttons. And what we want to do is we want to enable the various buttons. So if you come look into this, you can see that there's 3 buttons, increment, reset, and decrement. Because I'm lazy and I don't want to type those words, I'm just going to kind of paste them over here to remind me of what they are. And for each one, what we want to do is we just want to add a click listener. And so there I've written the one for decrement, and you can see I had the HTML on here just to try to make it easier for me. And then I can easily crank out 3 more and switch the names. All right, so there I've got my 3 click listeners. So you can see click is a function. You pass into this function a single parameter, and that parameter is a function. That actually, it's weird in a lot of languages, but in JavaScript, it's totally normal, right? And then what I want to do is I just want to print a simple log message. And so the log message I like to print is just something that says the word increment, and then just the number of cups, right? So coffee.cups. And so whenever I click this button, it should just print that message for me. I'll go ahead and do the same thing for reset and for decrement. But to be honest, those buttons aren't going to be visible just yet, right? Oops, looks like I typed the word increment where I meant to say decrement. And so we can go try this now. Only increment is going to work. But we can go ahead and do a refresh on our page. And then if you still got the Chrome DevTools up, clicks here should actually increment the number of cups. It printed a message, which is good, but it didn't increment the number of cups because I didn't write that. So what I meant to do is I meant to actually change the number of cups. I'm going to choose to use the plus operator, or sorry, minus operator there. And then reset is just going to set it to 0. And then increment is going to use the plus. So each of those is going to make a change. And then as we can see, only one button is visible right now. If we wanted to just go ahead and fix that now, I'll just go ahead and fix it. What we've got to do is we've got to temporarily just take the body and remove the class no cups, right? All right, so it's going to look just like that. So if we remove the class no cups, we'll be able to see all the buttons. And this line is, of course, temporary. All right, so I've got that saved up. Come over to my project here. I refresh it. Of course, I have a syntax error, and that's because I typed the word body. This is a little confusing. Document is a variable, actually, right? So there's window and there's document. Those are variables. Body is actually the name of the tag. So I confused myself, but I went ahead and showed the error. So this has to be in quotes because it's like a plain old, it's a tag, right? Whereas if you look in here, you won't find the word document anywhere. And that's because it's a variable that's kind of like the variable window that just exists on all pages. So little details there. So I forgot my quotes, and so I got an error. So now when I refresh it, they all show up because I removed that class for temporary testing. And if I click on like plus a couple times, make it to where you can see it always here. So if I click on plus a couple times, if I hit minus a couple times or reset, you can see that my buttons are listening. And so I have succeeded in my first step, which is to enable the buttons. And interestingly enough, I've actually finished the updates to the model. It's just because it's a really simple model. So we've got our updates to the model that are done. The thing we're going to do after this is we're going to start updating the view. And if you would like, you can go ahead and take off this little temporary test thing because we no longer need that. That was just for our temporary test. All right, I'll see you next time when we start updating the view. See you then.